In the rain, European capitals look different, as if water washes away the veneer of civilization, exposing gray stones and dark alleys where it's so easy to disappear. Imagine an evening in Paris or Vienna, say in October 1959. A man in a good quality trench coat steps out of a cafe. He is confident. He believes the worst is behind him. He has crossed the line, changed flags, sold secrets, and in return received guarantees of safety, new documents, and a bank account. He thinks the system he betrayed remained far to the east, behind the Iron Curtain. But he is mistaken. The moment he opens his umbrella, he doesn't yet know that his fate has already been decided not in a courtroom, but in a quiet office, thousands of kilometers away. He doesn't see the man on the opposite side of the street, a figure that doesn't stand out from the crowd, doesn't attract attention, but whose presence here is the final point in his biography. This man is not just an agent. He is the executor of a will that is not recorded on paper. He is a shadow cast by a group whose existence even many intelligence generals don't know about. The history of special services is full of loud failures and noisy scandals, but true professionalism is silence. Loud cases make it into newspapers, films are made about them, but there are operations whose goal is not just to eliminate a problem, but to erase the very fact of its existence. We delve into a world where betrayal is considered not just a crime, but a metaphysical violation of order, demanding not punishment, but annihilation. This is a story about how the elite of the invisible front was formed. People without names or pasts, acting on the basis of a verbal order, known in narrow circles as Order Number 0. This order was never typed, never entered into registers, and never filed into folders. It was conveyed by a look, a nod, a hint in the silence of Lubyanka offices. Its essence was terrifyingly simple. The object must disappear not only physically, but historically. No traces, no memoirs, no graves for followers to visit. Complete oblivion. To understand the nature of this ruthless efficiency, one must delve into the context of an era when the world was divided into two irreconcilable camps. The Cold War was not just a confrontation of economies or armies. It was a war of intelligence, a war of minds and nerves. In the mid-20th century, information became the most expensive commodity, and the people who possessed it were the most desirable targets. Defectors were the main headache for Soviet special services. Every high-ranking officer who crossed over to the opponent's side carried with him not just the names of residents or ciphers. He carried with him the prestige of the power. He became living proof that the system was imperfect. Public trials of traitors were impossible if they were already under the protection of Western special services. A different solution was required, a solution that would be as inevitable as fate. It was during this period, at the turn of the 40s and 50s, that the concept of pinpoint operations abroad began to form, which would later evolve into the activities of special groups. Official intelligence structures were constrained by diplomatic protocol and bureaucracy. Residencies at embassies were under round-the-clock surveillance by enemy counterintelligence. Every step of a diplomat was tracked, every contact recorded. To perform delicate tasks, people of a different kind were needed. Not diplomats in suits, but phantoms. Thus was born the idea of creating autonomous groups, operating outside the official hierarchy, reporting directly to the highest leadership. Group V, or as it was sometimes called in the corridors, history cleaners, became the embodiment of this idea. They were not special forces in the usual sense of the word. They did not storm palaces or seize airfields. Their weapons were patience, psychology, and absolute inhuman mimicry. The outer layer of this conflict, what could be observed from the outside, was a complex chess game on the map of Europe. For the ordinary person, life went on as usual. Houses were built, music played, people hurried to work. But beneath this veneer of normality, a continuous hunt was underway. Special Group V specialized in finding those who considered themselves invulnerable. The task was of colossal difficulty. Traitors who received new documents from the CIA or MI6 changed not only their names. Their appearance was changed with plastic surgery, their legends, biographies, even habits were changed. Finding such a person in a multi-million metropolis, like London or New York, seemed impossible. But Group V had a resource unavailable to others: time and a total systemic approach. The search began with an analysis of emptiness. When a person disappears, they leave behind a vacuum that inevitably fills. The group's analysts studied not where the person was, but where they were not, but where strange anomalies appeared. The sudden appearance in a quiet suburb of Munich of a wealthy gentleman with an indefinite accent, who worked nowhere but regularly visited expensive clinics, or a commercial firm's strange interest in certain closed clubs. Every little thing could become a thread. The work went on for years. The group's agents infiltrated the environment of the supposed target not as spies, but as part of the landscape. They became milkmen, postmen, owners of small shops, neighbors walking dogs. They became invisible, merging with the routine of everyday life. The technical equipment for these operations was ahead of its time. While ordinary residents used standard dead drops and radio transmitters, Group V utilized unique laboratory developments, created in single copies. Microscopic cameras embedded in buttons, poisons that left no trace in the body, devices for silently opening any lock. But technology was secondary. The main tool was intellect. An elimination operation could be prepared for 3 years for the sake of 3 seconds of action. This required colossal strain. Imagine the necessity of leading a double life for 1,000 days, never once misspelling a word, never giving yourself away with a glance or gesture, knowing that one mistake would lead not to deportation, but to an immediate and harsh end. However, beneath this external layer of a spy thriller lay a much deeper internal conflict. The psychological training of Group V agents is a topic that deserves separate study. Candidates were not selected for their physical attributes, although these had to be impeccable, but for their capacity for psychological transformation. A person was not just taught to play a role, they were taught to be someone else. The methods included elements of deep hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, though the term wasn't used then, and harsh psychological pressure. The future agent was placed in an artificially created environment, fully imitating the conditions of future life abroad. Entire streets mimicking quarters of Brussels or Washington were built on secret dachas in the Moscow region. Only the language of the host country was spoken there. Only local newspapers were read. Only the food sold in those stores was eaten. During this training, something terrible happened: the erasure of personality. To become a perfect hunter, an agent had to forget who they truly were. Memories of childhood, of parents, of first love were blocked and replaced with artificial memories of the legend. This was the price of effectiveness. A person remembering home is vulnerable. A person longing for birch trees can make a mistake. A Group V agent was not supposed to long for anything. They became a function, a living weapon. The internal drama of these people was that, while hunting traitors, they themselves were forced to betray their true nature every day. They made friends, knowing they would never open up to them. They entered into romantic relationships that were merely part of operational cover. They lived a lie to protect the truth, as they understood it. This internal schism led to paradoxical situations. Sometimes, an agent would begin to feel a strange, perverted sympathy for their target. After all, the traitor they were hunting had also gone through a change of identity, also lived under an assumed name, also felt fear. Hunter and prey became mirror images of each other. Both were strangers in this world, both wore masks. A dangerous bond emerged, which the curators at the center called the mirror syndrome. This is precisely why personnel rotation was strict and psychological support was provided continuously, even from thousands of kilometers away. The third layer of conflict, ideological, philosophical, is the foundation of this entire structure. What was this system based on? Why were people willing to live in another's skin for years and go to extreme measures? The answer lies in the specific understanding of duty and justice cultivated within these units. For them, the state was not merely an administrative apparatus but a supreme value, almost a sacred entity. Treason was perceived not as a violation of law, but as sacrilege, as a disruption of cosmic balance. The elimination of a defector was seen not as revenge, but as the restoration of order. Quote 1. Such was the logic. Here we encounter an ethical paradox. The people executing quote _to_ considered themselves fearless and blameless knights, although their methods were far from chivalrous. They used poisons, staged heart attacks and accidents, but in their coordinate system, the end justified the means. Moreover, there was a belief that oblivion was a worse punishment than physical cessation of existence. This is why the task was to erase from history. After a successful operation, not only people disappeared. Personal files were removed from archives, photographs were destroyed. The traitor's name was expunged from academy graduation lists. Families were informed that the person had gone missing under unexplained circumstances, or a legend was fabricated about an accident during exercises. The person turned into a phantom. He had never existed. The philosophy of Group B was built on the conviction that history is written by the victors, and the victor is the one who controls memory. If no one learns of the betrayal, then it did not happen. If the traitor cannot enjoy the fruits of their betrayal, then justice has triumphed. This was a cruel, cold, but in its own way coherent system of views that allowed agents to maintain their sanity while committing terrible deeds. They did not kill people. They corrected errors in the historical code. This dehumanization of the enemy was a necessary condition for the work. You cannot effectively hunt a person for long if you see a human in them. You must see in them a target, an error, a system glitch. However, in any perfectly tuned machine, a malfunction occurs sooner or later. The plot's transformation inevitably comes at the moment when the human factor penetrates the armor of ideological training. Let's imagine a situation. An agent, who spent 2 years getting close to the target, finally enters the inner circle. He becomes a family friend. He sees that the traitor is not a cartoon villain who sold his homeland for jeans and chewing gum. This is a broken, frightened person who, perhaps, made a mistake under pressure of circumstances, or became disillusioned with the ideas imposed on him. The agent sees how the target loves his children, how he suffers from nightmares. And at this moment, order number 0 ceases to be an abstract task of eliminating a symbol. It turns into the necessity of stopping with one's own hands the heart of a specific living person with whom you had coffee yesterday. This moment of truth is the most dangerous stage of the operation. This is where the turning point occurs. The agent realizes that he himself is as much a tool in the hands of the system as the one he must eliminate. If he stumbles tomorrow, they will send a quote "to" for him too. The line between friend and foe blurs. A temptation arises to let go, to warn, to sabotage the mission. But the system had foreseen this too. Group _quote_3_ never worked alone. There was always a backup. There was always someone watching the watcher. This created an atmosphere of total distrust and paranoia. You couldn't be sure that your partner was your friend and not your controller. In one of the legendary operations, the details of which are still classified as top secret, exactly such a case occurred. An agent, infiltrated as a doctor to a runaway scientist, was supposed to replace his medicine with a drug that causes irreversible changes in the cerebral vessels. The death was supposed to look like a natural stroke. But at the crucial moment, the agent hesitated. He saw a photograph on the scientist's table, an old black-and-white one, from that past life. In the photo, they were in the same uniform, at the same parade 20 years ago. They were comrades in arms. Fate simply separated them to different sides of the barricades. The hand with the ampule trembled. But at that moment, the nurse entered the room, the second agent of the group, whose true role the first had not even suspected. She gently took the ampule from his hands and, with a professional smile, completed the procedure. The lesson was learned. The system has no emotions. An order has no statute of limitations, and pity has no place in the profession. The culmination of such groups' activities is always quiet. It's not explosions and shootouts. It's a moment of absolute silence when the goal is achieved. The object ceases to exist. At this moment, tension reaches its peak, but it's internal. Agents need to disappear immediately, vanish, cover their tracks. This is harder than the liquidation itself. Exiting the operation is an art. One must sever all ties, abandon their established life, disappear from the lives of dozens of people who considered them an acquaintance without arousing suspicion. He urgently left to see his sick mother. He was transferred to another branch. The legends must be mundane and unquestionable. The final clash of forces occurs not on the street, but in the mind. After completing the task, the agent is left alone with emptiness. The adrenaline subsides, the goal has vanished, and desolation sets in. Returning home does not always bring relief. There, at home, they are heroes, but secret heroes. They are not awarded medals in front of a formation. Their portraits are not hung on a board of honor. The award ceremony takes place in a closed office, where the general shakes hands and presents a small box with an order that cannot be worn publicly. And again, a non-disclosure agreement is signed. Silence again. And the most terrifying thing is the realization of what you have done. You have erased a person from history. You have become an eraser in the hands of fate. The resonance of this activity is still felt today. The lessons we can learn from the history of Group V are frighteningly relevant. Today, methods have changed. Technology has advanced. A person's digital footprint is harder to erase than a paper archive. But the essence remains the same. The power of information and control over memory remain the main tools of geopolitics. We see how people are cancelled today, how history is rewritten, how facts drown in a sea of interpretations. Group V was a precursor to modern hybrid warfare, where the main goal is not to seize territory, but to seize meanings. The paradox is that, in trying to erase traitors from history, the system often achieved the opposite effect. Rumors, insinuations, mysterious disappearances gave rise to myths. Ghosts became legends precisely because they disappeared inexplicably. The fear of the omnipresent hand of the special services became a factor in politics. Western intelligence agencies used these cases to demonize the adversary, turning disappeared traitors into martyrs. Thus, the attempt to erase memory sometimes led to its perpetuation, but in a distorted, mythologized form. Another important lesson is the price of human life in the millstones of state interests. The story of Group V shows how easily a person turns into expendable material, into a pawn sacrificed to preserve the party. This applies to both traders and hunters. Both are victims of the same game, the rules of which they did not invent. The modern world, with its transparency and universal surveillance, would seem to make such operations impossible. But perhaps they have simply become even quieter, even more sophisticated. Perhaps modern cleaners do not remove people, but their digital identities, block accounts, destroy reputations, turning a person into a social outcast, which in the information society is equivalent to physical non-existence. We return to the beginning, to a rainy street in a European city. Many years have passed. The one who held the umbrella has long since become part of the earth. The one who watched him from the shadows, perhaps, is living out his days in a modest apartment on the outskirts of Moscow, sifting through the faces in his memory that are no longer there. The archives are silent. There is no mention of Order Number 0 in official directories. But there is a feeling that this story has not ended, it has simply changed its scenery. Oblivion is not the absence of information, it is the presence of mystery. Group V fulfilled its task. It remained a myth. And this myth continues to live, reminding us that history is not only what is written in textbooks, but also what was crossed out of them by the firm hand of a professional. And as long as there are secrets to be kept, there will also be those who can dissolve into the rain, leaving behind only silence. And this silence sounds louder than any words, reminding us of the fragility of human destiny in the face of a ruthless state machine. The circle is closed. The hunter and the victim have disappeared into the mists of time, leaving us only with questions for which perhaps we should not seek answers.